Hey, welcome to the Inner Circle podcast, where growth minded leaders come together to build better businesses and better lives. I'm your host, Hector Alvarado. Here, we don't do theory, we share real lessons, real systems, and real strategies you can use right away. This is a community for people committed to growth, impact, and supporting each other on the journey. You're in the right room, my friends. Let's get started.
Well, Hector, I'll just give the floor to you right away.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Willie. Thanks, everyone, for being patient with us here today. Really appreciate you jumping on and being here for another one of our Inner Circle tutorials. We are super excited to continue on through week 3 of the 4 workplace cultures. And so I want to open up with, again, want to paint a picture for you. And I want you to tell me if this feels familiar, okay? In your business today, a major business change occurs. A leadership comes in or out and says, hey, listen, we're going to start something differently this week. We're going to run some promotions. We're going to run some ads. We have a new sales push. We have a new initiative. We're going to go growth on all fronts. Sound exciting, right? But here's what actually happens in your teams today. Although you might get excitement in front of you, and everybody's like, yeah, 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 sounds good. Sounds good, boss. That sounds great. The moment you turn around, no one is clear on what that new priority actually is. There are 3 different managers in your teams that probably are telling their employees 3 different things. And the owner, who's all excited about these changes, is pointing out potentially a 4th direction that no one is even hearing about because it's just coming from excitement. And so while people are working harder than ever, but nobody can tell you what actually winning looks like in this scenario. Because let's be honest, meetings they occur and action items get assigned, but deadlines get passed. And new deadlines then get set. And so everybody's running around busy, but nobody is sure of what they're actually building towards. Now, just if that sounds familiar, raise your hand for me. If that's something that you've lived through and have experienced. Okay, a couple of you are nodding your head, so that tells me that you've seen it. Well, that's not a growth culture. Let me be clear on that. Some people may think, this is just because we're in growth mode. No, that's not why. It's because you're running a chaotic culture. And it is in this one that I see causes the most damage in growing businesses, businesses that want to scale. Not because the people are not working hard, but because all of this hard work is being spent on confusion instead of contribution. So notice the difference? They're spending their time spinning wheels instead of actually getting shit done. So that's where it becomes really frustrating. Now, we started this whole series talking about the happy accident, which is a culture by default, right? We talked about how that gets built organically. Then last week, we talked about command and control, and this is a culture by force. This is top down directions. Today, we're going to talk about chaotic culture, culture in collapse. And that's 3 very different problems, all of them pointing towards the same solution. So here's the hardest truth about a chaotic culture, and that it is almost never caused by laziness. You may think that that's the case, but it actually isn't. Your people aren't being lazy. And it is almost always caused by leaders who are working incredibly hard. They're working really hard at the wrong things and in so many different directions at once because there's so many different priorities. The energy that they're spending is real and the effort is real. But what we miss as leaders and as owners and business unit leaders is that the chaos around it is far too real. And that's where their energy is going. So, in a chaotic culture, it is an environment without sufficient structure, clarity, or consistent leadership to allow people to know how and what to expect. So, who owns what and what success looks like? resulting, as I said, in wasted energy, burnout, and what's worst off, and I keep saying it in all of these cultures, is the departure of your best performers. Your internal leaders get frustrated and then they leave. So you might say, okay, Hector, that's all great, but what creates it? How do I know if I have a chaotic culture today? So let's give you the roots. Let's understand how this forms. How does it grow in your company? Because you don't set out to create this organically. It happens. Okay. So first, the first root that you see that occurs is that there's no clear structure. Roles are not defined or they're overlapping. Means that there's mix and crossing. The accountability, what happens next is that it becomes blurry and no one knows who makes which decisions and who owns which outcomes. Okay, so confusion through role clarity. That's the first one. Second is competing priorities. Too many things become urgent. The leadership comes through and changes direction every week. Have you ever worked for a leader or an owner who's chasing a shiny object every week? Who has a new sales pitch, who has a new customer base, who has a new service, who has a new project that wants to implement, and every week it's a new thing? I always work for them. I have. I can tell you that creates chaos in your company because the leadership changes direction so many times, they don't know what to prioritize anymore. So, all of this is what leads to their second root. Your third one is inconsistent leadership. You have different leaders communicating different messages. And that stems from root number two, because these leaders don't know what the priorities truly are. And so their messaging to the staff, to the doers, to the front line is going to be super messy and unclear. So what the owner says and what the managers do generally are not aligned. And so the team is left trying to interpret signals instead of executing with clarity. How many times have you heard an employee say, man, that was so frustrating. I don't know. Should I listen to Bob, the owner, or Tom, Tim, the manager? People just get confused because they're hearing all of these different points of where to go work, but it's unclear. So here's how good leaders end up in this culture. And it is not built by careless leaders. They're built by leaders who grew faster than their systems and structures that the structures could keep up with. So these leaders respond to every new opportunity without completing the current one. That means they don't finish the projects because, again, they're chasing shiny objects. And so these leaders have to communicate strategy from the top without ensuring that it translates to the floor. So they become sort of a buffer, but they don't know how to be the buffer. And it becomes an issue when leaders who hire good people but never define what success looks like in each role. Also, leaders who confuse motion with progress. The activity feels productive even when it's clearly not aligned. This is all how you end up here. Okay, this is how you get into these painful points. And the painful irony is that the leader is often the hardest working person in a chaotic organization. And guess where that generally lands at? Go look in a mirror because you business owners are looking at the person who generally is working the hardest in these type of settings, right? This is who it is. This is you. This is us. This is the people that are leading teams without clarity, without those points. This is who you become. And you then do everything. And that is exactly the problem, is when the leader is the one holding everything together. The organization will never develop to the structure to hold itself together. And then the leader runs out of capacity, which, by the way, they always run out of capacity. You might lie to yourself and think, no, I could do it. You won't. I have yet to meet one that can. It's rare. I mean, I'm sure it could be done, but I haven't come across one. It's super rare for those even in circumstances of those that have scaled to multi-million businesses and successful ones, recognize that this is a downfall and are looking for help. So just know that. So, but there's nothing. What happens is that there's nothing underneath to catch all this activity, so it stays with this leader and this owner. So get your papers and pens ready. I'm going to give you 6 warning signs right now on how to avoid landing in this chaotic culture. Okay. Our very first one is these 6 warnings. As I name each one, I want you to think honestly about whether you have seen these in an organization in the last 90 days. So don't lie to yourself. Be open and honest. Be transparent because that's how you fix things is by being truthful to yourself. Okay. So sign number one, nobody knows the number one priority. If someone walked up to 3 different people on your team today and asked what the top priority is, would they get the same answer? In most chaotic cultures, the honest answer is no. If everything is urgent, then guess what? Nothing is. Okay? So that's warning sign number one. Look out for it. Test it. Go to your people tomorrow and ask them, what is our number one priority? I encourage you to do that tomorrow. It's going to give you such good knowledge about what your people actually think their priorities are. And it's going to give you an opportunity to correct and realign. Okay? Here's warning sign number two. Roles overlap and create conflict. 2 people think they own the same outcome, and nobody actually ends up owning it. So the gap between those 2 people is exactly where things fall through. And some people may say, yeah, that fell through the cracks. Yeah, that's the crack. That's what happens. It's because no one was owning it. Because Bob thought he owned it while, Jim thought he owned it. And at the end of the day, shoot, nobody owned it. So both of them feel the friction because they don't know that they're the ones to own it. Now, here's sign number 3. Meetings produce action items, right? You always take your to-dos, you go away with a task, but there's no action completed. So you've seen the list. The topics come up week after week. Someone gets assigned an item, and next week you come back and it's still on the list. Not because the people are lazy, but because there was no real owner, no real deadline. And here's the critical one, no real follow through built into the meeting structure. So no one held them accountable to the fact that they didn't complete their task. So that's warning sign number 3. And on to number 4. It says leadership that says different things. The owner says one thing Monday morning because they just listened to a podcast like ours and they were super excited and they came in all fired up and told everybody what they were going to do. And they told their managers what they were going to do. But that manager translated it in their heads a little differently. So they communicate something different on Tuesday to their teams. And the team receives both messages because they talk to both people and now has to choose who to believe or just wait until something or someone is certain about what to do. And in the meantime, nothing moves because they're unclear of what's next, right? Again, I know some organizations that have lived through this. I've seen it myself. Now, warning sign number 5. Burnout becomes the norm, not the exception. Your people are tired, genuinely tired, right? Not physically tired from the hard work, tired in the way that comes from working hard without clarity. This is the type of burnout that's the most dangerous because you can feel tired when you're in a project and you implement a project, but you see the project completion and you can celebrate and you could, feel proud about what you've done. When it occurs in this type of setting, you're just running like a hamster in a wheel. You're just going, 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 and essentially you burn out because you don't see it. You don't see it come to real fruition. And so when your effort does not connect to outcome, the energy starts to drain really fast. And that does not come back easily. In fact, that opens it up to warning sign number 6, which is your best performers start going in LinkedIn. They start going in Indeed and they start looking for options. When the environment is chaotic, they will always choose clarity. And that could end up being at your nearest competitor. That could be in a new role somewhere else, anywhere that has a structure that attracts them. And then here's the worst part is they rarely tell you the real reason they're leaving. How many exit interviews have you had in your company that yielded no real information? Because they really haven't told you why they left, right? You listen carefully. The theme is always there. I did not know exactly what success looked like, is what you'll often hear. So, this is all to give you your signs for your assignment to go be on the lookout. Go and understand these things this week. Now, one of the things that is left sort of untapped is the impact of this chaos. And chaos is the most common culture growing in businesses today. Not because leaders are failing, not because growth is fast and structure is low or slow. The gap between the two is where chaos lives, and recognizing it is the first act of leadership. So, acting quickly is the second. And chaos does not just slow down your business, it actively destroys your most valuable asset. And that's the energy of your best people. So, you've heard a lot about this. People are assets, or people are assets, sure. But are you burning out your assets? So you don't want to do that. You want to be fully aware of the chaos and the impact that it is doing to your business. So here's the burnout pipeline, and it starts with confusion. Okay, no clarity on priorities. Leads end up being wasted effort. Hard work points in the wrong direction, and wasted effort leads to frustration. Again, nothing sticks, nothing changes, and the frustration leads to burnout. The energy's gone, and the hope is gone, and the burnout leads to departure of your people. So, when people who leave this chaotic culture are almost never your lowest performers, think about that line for a minute. Okay. Most of the people that leave chaotic cultures are generally never the problem makers or the underperformers. They're always or mostly your self starters, your problem solvers, and your potential future leaders. The ones who stay often are the ones who have nowhere else to go or have learned to survive in the noise. So, what happens is you believe them to be your assets because they've been there with tenure. You disguise tenure as actual engagement and actual productivity, which is potentially very dangerous, especially if the structure that is being lived in is chaotic. So that is something to look out for when evaluating something here, when evaluating the culture in your teams. So I want you to estimate something over the next few minutes. How many hours per week does your team spend clarifying conflicting instructions? Duplicating work because roles overlap and no one knew exactly who owned it? Or reworking tasks because the priority changed mid execution? And attending meetings that produced no clear decisions or outcomes? Right? Every one of those hours that was paid for, think about the impact, okay? Because none of them move your business forward. In that number, the number of hours and your average cost of labor that you spend on all that noise, that is the tax that you're paying for running a chaotic culture. So if you want to talk about impact, think about that for a minute. If there's something that's going to engage you to act, just take a minute and think about how many man hours at your average cost or rate, of hours paid out to your employees, and multiply that. That's the gap. That's that tax. And like the taxes that you file to the government, this one grows every year when you do nothing. It continues to escalate because as you grow, you add more people, you add more tax. Okay, this is what happens every single time. Now, I'm going to give you a live study of a case that we worked with a construction company. This is a general contractor, around 54 employees, and about 3 project managers across multiple active job sites. Okay, the revenue had grown about 140% in about a 2-year period, and the owner was working roughly about 74 hours a week. On paper, through its colleagues, success story, right? Revenue strong everybody seems to see from the outside like this is doing really well, while internally it was completely coming apart. Now, this is a current story, but we can always refer back to the Willie's trucking story that we can all relate to, but this is a recent one, okay? Each project manager is getting different directions from the ownership group on the same projects. Nobody had defined roles. Everybody did what fell in front of them and what they thought was right. Meetings produced long lists of actions with no owners and no deadlines. So nothing got done. And the same issues appeared week after week after week in their supposed action meetings. Okay. Then two of the project managers finally got frustrated and they resigned, left, gave their notice without warning. And in those exit conversations, they both cited the same reason. I don't know what to do here. It's so frustrating. I have no role clarity. I have no idea what success looks like. So I was never sure if I was doing the right thing or not. Now, let me tell you, the owner in this case was not failing. This was not the owner's fault. He was just doing too much. In trying to be everywhere, he had inadvertently made himself the only source of direction, clarity, and decision making, and the only source of truth. So when he could not keep up, which happens when you break, right? Guess what? Your team can't keep up either. And so that's when the whole system breaks. So here's what we did. We did three moves, very simply. We declared one priority. We identified what's one quarterly rock, what's one quarterly goal that the team and organization has to work on. Not necessarily 5 or 10 or 20. No, just one. Simplify it. They're a small team. They can handle one, you know. And then understand what are the two most critical active jobs. Everything else is publicly deprioritized for 30 days. That means you tell everybody if it's not on this, it's not a priority, don't do it. This is what you should be working on. If it's not yielding a result on X, don't do Y. Okay? And you got to communicate that to everybody so everybody's aware. That was the first thing that was done. Secondly, is we held a role clarity session. Each remaining manager left with a one pager written out with scope of authority. They understand what they owned after that meeting. It was clear that what they needed to own and what they needed to escalate. And then we went to the third, which is that this owner changed their weekly meetings where they had no action items in the past. Now the meetings didn't end without an action item having a name, a deadline, and a follow up date so that we knew exactly who was going to own the actual completion of that task. And then we regrouped 90 days later to see how things had changed. Man, they said the structure was completely different, and the owner reduced his hours from 75 to 52 by getting out of the way and staying in their lane and allowing the team to make decisions without him. Trusting and delegating was critical. So the chaos is not a personality problem, as you can see. It is a structure problem. So today, if you're thinking my chaos is because of Bob, Tim, whatever, whomever that just can't do it. No, it's not. It's the structure. The structure problems have structure solutions. So that's a good thing, right? Because it gives an opportunity to fix it. So these are not long-term culture building moves, but they are triage. So I'm going to give you three rapid stabilization moves, things that you could go do today, right now. Right after this call, you can get started so that you could stop the bleeding immediately and start to work towards real culture work and let it begin. Okay. I know in the past some of you have asked me, all right, what do I do? How do I start fixing it? Well, here's your recipe on a short form. Number one, declare one priority. If you're living in a chaotic culture today, everything is urgent. So that means nothing is. Your job as a leader is to go tomorrow and make that call. Publicly announce and be very intentional. Say, this week, we are working on X with the next 30 days. Our non negotiable priority is this. Everything else becomes secondary. When in doubt, ask yourself, does this save and preserve and serve the priority that we've talked about? And if the answer is no, it waits. Let your employees know that. Let your leaders know that. This is the single act of clarity that will reduce confusion more than any process improvement plan that you could implement. It's very simple and very easy to go and put forward. So start there. Okay. Number two, define who owns what. Chaos thrives in gaps between roles. So pick your top five ongoing functions or outcomes in the business, and for each one, assign an owner. Not a team, okay? Not a team, because when a team owns it, no one owns it. One person owns one outcome. And the owner is not always the owner that's doing the work. The owner is the person that's accountable for the outcome, okay? So in my example, Bob may own the outcome, but Tim is doing the work. Tim's doing it, but Bob speaks to it, understands why it's happening, and is accountable to making sure that the work gets done. He's your project manager, essentially. Write that down, communicate it, and then do it this week. And here's your third move. Okay? Change the one meeting. If you're even having a meeting, if you're not, go implement a meeting. And if you're having a crappy meeting with no structure, stop right now and implement the following. Choose one day. Start at the same time and at the same time. Make that meeting structure reoccurring and make sure you enforce it. No one misses this meeting. It is your weekly team meeting, right? And this is what will change the game for you. Here's one rule, okay? As you close these meetings, no action item ever leaves this meeting without a name, a deadline, and who's going to follow up to make sure that it gets completed, okay? And that gets reoccurring so that when you run that meeting, that same time, same start time, same process, week after week. And in 30 days, that meeting will feel so different. It will become embedded in the way that your team operates. And it will show you how quickly clarity compounds. Okay? So if you're living in a chaotic culture right now, my suggestion to you is go out quickly. Stabilize your environment, define your roles, establish accountability, give people clarity on what's expected, and then you hold the line. You don't do, you hold the line. That's the shift between what your role is today, where you think you have to do it, you transition to holding the standard. Okay, that's what that means. Now that's week 3, folks. And so we have now communicated and named all 4 cultures. The happy accident, culture by default, the command and control, where this culture is by force, chaotic culture, this is in collapse, and next week we wrap it up with the only culture that is actually worth building. Okay? And so next week we get into the intentional culture, and it is the reason we spent the past 3 weeks naming these, because we wanted to show you what does not work. But the intentional culture is done not as a destination that you arrive at. It is a system you build deliberately, consistently, and daily. And so we're going to build this culture with our OBS Compass tools and show you how we do this. We're going to share with you what behavior standards, leadership modeling, recognition, and accountability looks like so that you can reinforce it daily. All right? By the time we wrap up next week, so we want you all to come back next week, you're going to leave with something tangible. All of you that are part of the inner circle will have a document that describes the culture you're building and the first steps to make it real. So you could certainly bring all your 3 assessments, the full picture of where you're at, and so that you could get to work right away. So again, I'll say this to the group. Those inner circle members have access to the worksheets. Go use them so that you could really get value for these tutorials. All right. So that's all that I had here today, Willie. We'll send it back to you.
Awesome. So yeah, let's go to Q&A, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and let's talk about it. I I definitely have the experience of living in a chaotic culture, and so yeah, I know all about it.
What do you think the pain points are for those of well, I think everybody knows the pain points, Willie. I think that one is probably an easy question. Let me backtrack that one.
Yeah.
What are some of the real steps that you could take to get out of the chaotic culture so to actually allow it to move away from it? Because you lived it.
Yeah.
So maybe walk them through that for this group.
For me, number one is the core value piece. That
Mhm.
is just number one. It's getting up or coming up with clear standards around, yeah, how you want your people to behave and accountability and all that starts with core values and then having a sit down and having those one-on-one talks with what our standards are in our business and getting everyone aligned. I think that's the one piece that I never understood. Like, how do you get out of a chaotic culture until this was taught to me? And it almost felt like once I had the framework, it was actually simple and it was not that hard to do. It just had to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exactly like what we pointed out here today on those three points of action. If you as an owner can just go and do those three things, you will start to move the needle right away.
Yeah, and we here at OBS we coach businesses and we talk a lot about execution. It's actually just scheduling that in and making it happen is the key. It's once you have put it all together.
Yeah, absolutely, right? And it's making sure that as business owners, everybody understands, just the importance through it. So why don't we open it up? We've got about 20 minutes here, and I'd like to just give everybody an opportunity to really build off of this. That's a wrap for today's episode of The Inner Circle. If something in today's conversation resonated, inspired you, or gave you a breakthrough, please share it with someone you care about. The right idea at the right time can change someone's business and their life. So make sure you follow the show, leave a review, and stay connected with us because this community is built on relationships, real support, and real growth together. Remember that clarity means nothing without action. So choose one insight from today, put it into motion this week, and notice the shift. Thank you for being part of this journey, for showing up for your growth, and for being part of the Inner Circle community. See you in the next episode, and let's keep growing together.